The wind was sharp that morning as Evelyn Harper stepped off the old stagecoach, her boots sinking into the cold dirt outside the Wyoming trading post. Her dress was too thin for the weather, patched in places, torn in others. A brown satchel hung over her shoulder, but it held little more than a small Bible, a torn photo, and a piece of bread she had saved from the night before. She looked around. Dry hills stretched far and wide. The sky was gray, full of snow that hadn't fallen. Yet, a wooden sign nearby read, Carson Hill Ranch to 1 mile west. That was the name, the one a kind stranger on the road had whispered to her just days ago. He said, "Go there. Tell the man you'll work for free." He don't turn folks away easy, so now she walked, each step heavy. Her feet ached. Her hands shook from cold. But she didn't stop. Behind her lay Kansas, a ruined farm, a grave with her husband's name, and debts she couldn't pay. The world had taken everything. Now she had one last chance. When she reached the ranch, it was quiet. Horses stood by the fence, their warm breath rising into the air. A large barn sat to the left. Smoke curled from the chimney of the ranch house. She stopped at the gate, brushed her hair back with a frozen hand, and took a deep breath. A tall man stepped out from behind the barn. He wore a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat. His face was tanned and rough from the sun, but his eyes were calm, steady, not hard like most men she'd met lately. He looked at her, not up and down, not like she was trouble. Just looked, waiting for her to speak. She swallowed. "Please," she said, voice cracking. "I don't have money. I don't have a home, but I'll work. I'll clean, cook, tend animals, anything. Just, please take me. I'll work for free." There was silence for a moment. The wind blew, her skirt against her legs. The cowboy stepped forward slowly. His boots crunched the frosty ground. Then he took off his hat, held it to his chest, and said gently, "You're the woman I've been waiting for." Evelyn blinked. She didn't understand. She didn't believe. "What?" "I've been running this ranch a long time," he said. Lots of hands came and went. None stayed. None wanted to build a life here. You're not asking for money. You're asking for a place. I got a place. I got too much land, too much silence. You're welcome here." Her lips trembled. Her knees almost gave out, but she nodded, slowly. She was too proud to cry, too tired to speak more. He opened the gate for her, as if opening a door to a whole new life. "I'm Vance Carson," he said. "That house over there's warm. You can rest tonight. Tomorrow, you can show me what you know." "Evelyn Harper." She replied quietly. He gave her a slight smile. "Well, Miss Harper, looks like you just came home." And just like that, the wind didn't feel so cruel anymore. The bunkhouse was small but clean. There was firewood, a cot, and a warm wool blanket. Evelyn sat down, looked around, and for the first time in months, felt safe. Out the window, she saw Vance walk back toward the horses, slow and steady. He didn't ask questions, didn't judge. He just opened his gate and let her in. And in that quiet moment, as snowflakes began to fall, Evelyn whispered a prayer, not for riches, not even for peace. Just thanks. She didn't know what would come next. But for the first time in a long time, she had a place to stay. A place where someone had waited for her. Evelyn woke early the next morning to the sound of a rooster and the soft creak of wind in the walls. The bunkhouse smelled like old wood and dust, but it was warm. Her hands were stiff from the cold, but she didn't wait. She pulled on her boots, tied her hair back, and stepped out into the cold morning air. The sky was pale blue, and the ranch was already moving. Horses stood in the corral. A few ranch hands were leading cattle down the slope. She saw Vance near the barn, throwing hay to the animals. She didn't wait to be asked. She grabbed a worn pair of gloves from a nail by the barn door and started working. She shoveled the walkway, fed the chickens, and scrubbed the old metal pots in the outdoor sink. Her arms ached, and the cold bit at her cheeks, but she didn't slow down. Vance noticed. He didn't say much, but he watched from a distance. He saw how she rolled her sleeves and moved like she had something to prove. She didn't act like a visitor. She acted like this place was hers to care for Dot by midday. She was in the kitchen of the main house, sleeves rolled up, boiling beans and baking cornbread for the ranch hands. Vance came in, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. "You sure you ain't tired?" he asked. "I'll rest when I'm done," she said, not looking up from the stove. He smiled at that. "You work like you've always belonged here." She paused, her hands still. Those words felt soft, like a blanket over her shoulders. "Never belonged anywhere before," she whispered. "Well," he said, pulling up a chair, "maybe that's about to change." The days passed slow but full. Evelyn rose before the sun and slept after the stars came out. She learned the names of the horses, cleaned the tack room, and even helped patch the chicken coop roof when a storm rolled through. Every evening, she and Vance sat on the porch, sharing coffee or quiet stories. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. They just listened to the wind, the soft lowing of cattle, and the silence that felt more like peace than emptiness. She learned small things about him, that he had grown up here, that the land was his father's before him, that he had lost his own family too, a younger brother in a horse fall, his mother to sickness. He never talked about love, not once. But there was a gentle sadness in his eyes that told her he had known loss too deep for words. One night, Evelyn burned her hand on a hot skillet. It wasn't serious, but she hissed in pain and backed away fast. Vance was at her side in seconds. He took her hand in his, dipped it in cold water, and wrapped it with clean cloth. His touch was careful, quiet. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. She looked up at him, and for a moment the room was still. He didn't kiss her. He didn't speak more. He just held her hand until the sting faded. One morning, one of the ranch hands, Tommy, laughed and said, "Boss, you better marry this woman, for we all fall in love with her cooking." Evelyn blushed, and Vance just tipped his hat, eyes full of something soft and deep. Later that day, as she walked through the pasture with a basket of eggs, she stopped and looked around. The land was wide and open, the wind brushing the tall grass like a song. The barn, the cattle, the house, all of it felt like part of her now. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was running. She was standing still. She was staying. And maybe, just maybe, she was being loved, even if no one had said it yet. The sun had just started rising when Evelyn saddled the brown mare named Dolly. She had a basket tied behind the saddle, filled with warm biscuits and coffee in a tin jug. She was heading out to check the northern fence line with Vance. It had become their routine, riding together, working in quiet, sharing small smiles and even smaller words. The air was cold, but the sky was clear. The ground sparkled with leftover frost. Evelyn rode beside Vance, their horses moving steady across the open land. "You ever get tired of all this?" she asked softly. Vance shook his head. "This land raised me. Every rock, every fence post. I've touched it. No, ma'am. Never tired of it. But it's nicer now, with you here." She smiled at the ground, her cheeks red not just from the cold. They rode to the north pasture, where part of the fence had been leaning. Vance hopped down first, checking the posts. Evelyn followed, handing him tools as he worked. The sky grew warmer, the sun lifting higher. They laughed about a stubborn mule that chased a cow into the creek last week. Suddenly, there was a sharp sound, a cracking branch, followed by a wild snort. A young bull, separated from the herd, came charging through the brush, spooked and wild-eyed. Evelyn didn't see it fast enough. The bull bolted toward her, fast and wild. "Evelyn, get back!" Vance shouted, but she froze. Her legs wouldn't move. In a blink. Vance was there. He grabbed her by the waist and pulled her hard to the ground, rolling her beneath him as the bull rushed past. Dust flew everywhere. Her heart pounded. She could feel his breath near her ear. He stayed there for a moment, his arms still wrapped around her, chest rising and falling with deep breaths. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. She nodded slowly, eyes wide. "I didn't move. You didn't have to." "I did." He helped her sit up, brushing dirt from her coat. She looked at him, her hands shaking now from the shock. "You didn't have to save." She whispered. "I wanted to," he said simply. "I would again." They sat there for a long time. The bull had run off, back toward the woods. But neither of them moved right away. Something had changed, not spoken, not loud, but real. Later that night, Evelyn sat by the fire in the main house, her hands still shaking just a little. Vance handed her a cup of warm cider and sat beside her. "I thought I lost you," she said, her voice small. "You didn't," he replied. "I ain't going nowhere, and I'm not letting you go nowhere either." She looked at him for a long time. Her heart was full, scared but full. She had been alone so long. She had survived so much. But now she had someone who would run into danger for her. Someone who cared without needing to say it all the time. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to be someone's someone." "You already are," Vance said. "You just don't see it yet." From that day on, things felt different, softer, deeper. Vance brought her wildflowers in an old tin cup. She packed extra cornbread in his saddlebag. They didn't talk much about what happened with the bull. They didn't have to. The way he looked at her said enough. One evening, she found a small wooden box on her cot. Inside was a silver ring, simple and worn. No words, but she knew. She held it to her chest and smiled through tears. Not because she was being asked, but because she already knew her answer. She had come here asking for work. She had found a life, and now she was ready for love. Spring came early that year. The snow melted fast, and green grass returned to the pastures. The river ran full, and the air smelled like fresh earth and wildflowers. Birds sang in the trees near the bunkhouse, and calves stumbled beside there. Mothers in the open fields. Evelyn stood outside the barn one morning, her hands on her hips, watching the ranch hands gather for breakfast. She had just baked 4 trays of biscuits and fried a dozen eggs. The men joked and laughed as they filled their plates. She smiled quietly to herself. She had once walked through these gates with nothing. No money, no home, just empty hands and a broken heart. Now her hands were full. Full of work, yes, but also full of peace. Full of purpose. And full of love. Vance walked over, his hat low, holding 2 tin cups of hot coffee. He handed one to her and leaned beside her against the barn wall. 3 new calves this morning, he said, and one stubborn one that kicked Joe in the knee. Evelyn chuckled. Maybe that calf didn't like his haircut. Vance grinned. Could be. They stood there quietly, drinking their coffee, watching the ranch breathe and move like it had for years. But now it felt new. Now it felt like it belonged to them both. After a moment, Vance turned to her. His voice was low and warm. "I meant to say something yesterday," he said. "What's that?" It's been a full year since the day you showed up at my gate. Evelyn blinked. She hadn't counted the days, but now that he said it, she felt the weight of it. A year ago, she had begged to stay. A year ago, she had said, "I'll work for free." And now? "I remember," she whispered. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. It was old and soft from being carried. He handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "Deed papers," he said. "Half?" "The ranch, in your name." She looked at him, stunned. "What?" "You're not working for me," he said. "You never were. You've worked beside me. You built this life with your hands, with your heart. You were never meant to work for free. You were meant to belong." Tears filled her eyes, but she laughed too, shaking her head. "You fool," she said. "You're giving me half a ranch?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "I'm giving you all of me. And all of this. Because without you, none of it means a thing." Evelyn couldn't speak. She set the coffee cup down and leaned into him, her head against his chest. His arms wrapped around her, strong and safe. She had never asked for this. She had never dared to dream of it. But now she had it. A home, a man, a future. Later that day, the ranch hands cheered as Vance stood on the porch, holding Evelyn's hand. "Y'all knew it already," he said, grinning. "But we're making it official now. She's not just the cook or the heart of this place. She's my partner. She's my bride." Cheers rang out. Someone threw a hat in the air. Evelyn covered her face, laughing through tears. They didn't have a church wedding. No preacher, no dress. Just a promise made under the open sky with the land as their witness. That night, they sat by the fire, side by side, the stars above and the soft sound of crickets outside. "I never thought I'd find this," she said, softly. "I always knew someone would come," he answered. "Didn't know when, didn't know who, but I knew. And when you walked through that gate, I felt it. You were the woman I'd been waiting for." Evelyn looked at the fire, then at him. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved me too," he said, and in that quiet, simple moment, they both knew love had come to stay.